My name is Jakob Brack and I teach history at this university. I wanted to ask you if it wouldn't be helpful to achieve the goal you argue for, to have a normal attitude towards Israel, if we stop using one of the expressions you yourself have been using tonight, namely calling Israel a Jewish state. Because this generates support for a religious minority and from the Christian Zionists, who are much more numerous than the entire number of Jews in the world, certain fundamentalist hopes. If we treat Israel normally, we have to avoid this cliche, because I think this is one of the reasons we cannot open up the debate, particularly because, I repeat, the vast majority of unconditional supporters of Israel in the United States are not Jewish. And many Jews, as you well know, oppose certain policies and sometimes even the very existence of an ethnocracy. What do you think of this?
Let me make a couple of points on that excellent question. First of all, I do want to emphasize that I am making the argument that the Israel lobby is a normal interest group. It's not a cabal or a conspiracy. It is a normal interest group. Second, I am emphasizing, as you correctly pointed out, that not only should we treat Israel as a normal state, but I believe that Israel is a normal state. Like other states, it does good things and bad things. And I believe the United States should treat Israel as a normal state. So I just wanted to emphasize that point. Now, with regard to the whole question of whether or not it's good to treat Israel as a quote-unquote Jewish state, this is not necessarily my preference. It is, I use that language because the people of Israel and most of its supporters outside of Israel refer to it as the Jewish state. Most Israelis I've met over the years self-identify as members of a Jewish state, rightly or wrongly, and I take that as a given. I want to be very clear. I like living in the United States because it's not a Christian state. I like the idea of living in a liberal state. And if I were Jewish, I would prefer to live in a liberal state as a Jew rather than living in a Jewish state. It's not because I don't like Jewish states and think they're evil, or I think Christian states are evil. I like liberal states. So it was not my decision to label it a Jewish state. I just think that most of the people there and most of their supporters identify it as a Jewish state, and I take that as a given. Now, with regard to your point about the Christian Zionists, you're right that inside the United States of America, Israel gets a huge amount of support from the Christian Zionists. But they do very much want to create a Jewish state in the land of Palestine, because they believe it is very important for the Jews to control literally every inch of Palestine for the purposes of facilitating the second coming. This is not a view that I identify with it at all. It's a view that's antithetical to my way of thinking about the world. And I would imagine that for most Jews and most Israelis, this is not a view that they identify with in any meaningful way. And they formed a tactical alliance, the Israelis and American Jewish supporters of Israel, with the Christian Zionists. But it is important to emphasize, I think, that the Christian Zionists do want a Jewish state.